Hey everyone, and welcome to this Risky Business product demo. My name is Patrick Gray. Everything you see in these videos from our wonderful sponsors is sponsored. That means everyone you're seeing in one of these paid to be here. Now, normally what happens is we get a sponsor into one of these videos and they walk us through some new product, right? They want to show it off. Today's a little bit different. We're joined by Harish Chakraworthy and Brett Winterford, who both work at Okta. And the idea today is that they're going to show off some features in the core product that are, as far as I know, available to everyone, and stuff that people might not necessarily know exists in the Okta platform, various features that have been introduced that can really help you to lock yourself down against certain sort of IDP related attacks. I guess, Brett, let's start with you. Like, what are you going to walk us through today?
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, good to see you. We're going to walk you through about 4 of the many features that we've pushed out since about October last year that aim to help customers reduce the attack surface of their Okta org, prevent account takeovers, and then limit the blast radius if there is a stolen administrative session. So, like you said, all features that are available in all license tiers for the Okta Workforce Identity Cloud. Things we've done just to harden the Okta admin console in the face of a deteriorating threat environment.
Now, you say a deteriorating threat environment, but I'm just going to, call it straight up. I mean, this is stuff that was introduced really in response to a bunch of that sort of lapsus style activity, right? When you had attackers hitting like casinos and stuff last year, and that didn't just affect Okta. I mean, there were people who were Entra ID customers who were being affected by all of that. But really, this is a response to changing attacker behavior and them doing stuff like federating in external identity providers and things like that, right? So you've introduced a whole bunch of features that just make preventing that a lot easier.
Bingo. Yeah, we wanted to basically respond to some of those social engineering tactics we'd seen used. I guess we'd seen for the first time since late last year enough evidence of what an adversary would do if they got access to an Okta admin console. And, that kind of gives you a bit of a shock and just helps you think through and threat model. What do I need to do to make the access to the administrative session more resilient, basically? So
yep.
Today, there's already some default things we've changed that we won't necessarily demonstrate. So today, we require MFA to be satisfied before you can hit the admin console. We've capped session duration and idle session duration for the admin sessions aligned with AL3. But we've also rolled in these tools to, allow our customers to pursue something close to zero standing privileges, to prevent theft and replay of administrative sessions, constrain the use of API tokens. And there's a bunch of new paid features as well. We're not going to cover them today. We're just going to focus on 4 capabilities, free for all customers, easy to toggle on and use. The first capability we'll demonstrate is session binding. So we've talked about this, I think, before, Pat. For every action in the admin console now, whether it's a view or a modify event, Okta's checking that the ASN of the request is the same as what was recorded at sign-in, and will revoke the session if the ASN changes. And optionally, Okta administrators as well can choose to bind sessions by IP rather than just by ASNs. ASN's on by default, IP is optional. I'll hand over to Harish now to demonstrate this capability using a contrived session hijacking event. Now, obviously, usually a session would be hijacked using malware on a target's device or adversary in the middle phishing. In this case, we've just simply preloaded some cookies into the browser. But I'll hand over to Harish to show you this in action.
Absolutely. Thank you. So what I have here is I'm sharing my screen here. I've logged in as an administrator. I'm showing the settings inside Security General where we have these settings turned on. For this demonstration purpose, I'm going to switch over to another browser, which I'm using mod headers here to change my IP address. And what I've done is I've actually loaded the administrative, all the session cookies from this browser to this one right here. And I want to walk you through what happens in case Okta sees a roaming session. So I'm going to go to bookmarks and I'm going to go ahead and try to log in with the session. As you can see here, access is forbidden, and that is the expected outcome. Now, if I switch back as myself and I were to just reload the page, you can see that I got logged out as well, and that is also the expected outcome. So if I log back in, I'm using Okta FastPass, Touch ID here, and navigate here to reports, and look at the system logs. In this case, we'll directly look at the system logs. You can see there was a roaming session that was detected and access was denied, and that is the expected outcome.
What I like about what you've done here is you haven't necessarily made that alert a big deal, because now that's just something you don't really have to worry about. So that's nice.
Yeah. So basically, what we've seen obviously is a session roaming event has been detected. The legitimate admin has been signed out, but it's not a big deal, like you said, Patrick. I mean, reauth, if you're using something like FastPass, is taking 2 to 3 seconds to satisfy 2 factors. So if it was a benign event, it wouldn't really bother anyone. But those events that Harish has just shown you in the system log in the admin console are obviously being streamed out to a SIEM in most production environments. That, alongside any other signals or indicators they've got, would be a good signal for them to identify whether there was a session hijacking event.
But you're not relying on the user, right? So it's not like you're throwing them a big banner, or the admin in this case. You're not throwing them a big banner. You're putting it in the system log. You can send that to the security team. You're not just relying on that administrator to flag it, which I think is obviously that's a choice you've made.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the first one. Let's move on to the next demo now. We're going to look at locking down access to Okta management APIs by IP address. So as an aside, before we get started, we recommend at Okta Security that you limit the use of these static API tokens to things like testing scenarios or things where ease of use is a factor. In production, it's best to configure an API service integration that uses OAuth 2. OAuth 2 tokens have a lot of security advantages over static tokens. They're short-lived. They offer fine-grained access control via scopes. They offer, key rotation without downtime, better auditing, and now they can be sender constrained as well, so configured to only be valid when they're used by the client that requested them. But we're now going to look at an older method of integration using these static bearer tokens, and it's often requested by some of the older legacy integrations. And if you're using these tokens in production, you need to find some way to constrain their use any way you can, in this case by network location. So this is using a feature that's in early access today in Okta, probably GA within a few days, in which Okta, when an administrator is creating a new token, one of these static tokens, they're asked to nominate a network zone, that is a set of IPs or an IP range, where Okta should expect this token to be used from to call Okta APIs. So I'm now going to ask Harish to create a new token and allow this a specific network zone that he created before we set up today. And that network zone will include his IP that he's using right now. And then he'll attempt to call an Okta API from that IP, and again, call it from a second IP that's not in the allow list. Pretty obvious, right? I'll throw it over to you, Harish.
Thank you. So I've navigated here to Security API, and I'm going to click on Tokens here. I'm going to create a new, let me go ahead and delete the one that's already there. Let me go ahead and create a new token. Let's call this Demo. And then here you have a drop-down where you can specify where the network zone, where the API calls are going to originate from. I'm going to drop down and pick any one of the following zones. And I have a network zone here, my demo IP, where the calls are going to originate from. I'm going to go ahead and create a token. I'm going to go ahead and copy the token, X out from here. All right, for the second part of the demo, what I have is I have a CLI. Actually, I pulled up my terminal here, and there should be 2 tabs. On the very first tab, I've logged into my local device, which is in the IP, which is on the allowed list. And as you can see here, I have a really simple script here that's actually doing a post request, and it's actually changing, making some changes to my name, and it's as simple as that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the script. I'm going to go ahead, paste the key we just got earlier. Looks good. Save it. Let's go ahead and run this command. Wonderful. So the key here is we have a error code, which is 200, which means that the request was successful. Now I'm going to switch over to my second terminal. And this actually is on a different IP address, which is not on the allowed list. And once again, it is the same command line shell script that's using curl. I'm going to go ahead and open this script right here. I'm going to go ahead and paste the same key token we got earlier, save it, and let's go ahead and run it. So as you can see here, the error code is 401, and then it says the token is invalid. And that is the expected outcome. So when a request originates from a zone that's not on the allowed list, request is blocked, and you get a 401 error.
So what are the circumstances where this is going to be most useful? Because I'm imagining a lot of these tokens are like machine to machine, right? So that that would make this just really simple, a no-brainer if you're dealing with machine to machine, authentication and authorizations.
Exactly. You need to be identifying the IP range. So, for example, if there's a security integration that wants one of these tokens, ask them to supply you with an IP range that you allow list, so that if that token were ever stolen from that security vendor, for example, it can't just be reused from somewhere else.
No, 100%. And this is just an interesting way to do it. Instead of doing it at the network layer, do it at the authentication layer. It's just another option. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's something people should do, because if an attacker happens to pop that integration, extract the token, you don't want them going around and just using that everywhere, right? And we see attackers do that all the time. So yeah, 100% endorse. I got to ask though at this point, this one's not out yet, right? This is going into GA in a couple of days, did you say?
It's in early access, so if you can...
Yeah.
Play with it now, but it's not GA. Yeah.
So the question I was going to ask actually, it's in early access, but are people actually using it? Is this something that customers are like, yes, finally, or is it sort of still a bit under the radar, and that's why we're doing this video?
I love the fact that we're showing people now before it's in GA, because I want everyone to use it. We have seen in early access it's being used, and there are definitely customers that have been asking for it. The security conscious customers have been asking for it for a long time. And I think for a long time we've been saying, but there are better options. There's two patterns here that you should be using.
They don't care.
They don't care. If you give them that, if you give them a capability, they'll use it, right? So you'd have to provide them the tools to secure it. The message I want to leave with our customers is, if you're an Okta customer with some of these older integrations that use static bearer tokens, check if there's an API service integration first. Most of the good security vendors have an API service integration. It usually means that the permissions are really de-scoped. It's only asking for what it needs.
Sure.
If your security vendor is asking for one of these tokens, just basically go and reconfigure the API token to constrain its use by network location.
Yeah, like trying to change auth method to like OAuth2, and like, that's work, Brett. Come on. Whereas a simple IP restriction via your IDP, I can definitely dig it. I hope that'll become popular, right? Like, I guess it's going to be up to you to sort of educate users on this feature and get them to use it. But that's a good one. Thumbs up. What else are you going to show us today?
Okay, let's jump to our next one. We're going to show you something called governance for Okta admin roles. So one of the objectives we talked about earlier was to reduce the blast radius for a stolen administrative session. And to do this, Okta basically lifted some features from our identity governance product, and we integrated them directly into the Okta admin console, so that customers can start taking a least privilege approach to granting Okta admin roles. This is provided at no cost in every license tier in the Workforce Identity Cloud. So basically, after using this feature, access to highly privileged roles or permissions can be configured to require dual authorization, which, Pat, we talked about a long time ago. Where was it? It should have been there. And to trigger things like customizable workflows. So take some automated action when this happens. They can also be scheduled to expire after a specified time interval.
Sorry, I just want to cut you off there for a second and just sort of spell out what we're talking about. And, in some of these attacks that we saw last year, the attackers were able to convince help desk support personnel to remove or reset multi-factor authentication from admin accounts, which is obviously extremely not great. At the time, I believe that you could configure Okta to, well, I mean, it depended on how you configured your roles, right? And obviously people should not have been allowing that, but now you've kind of changed some defaults around and made it easier and whatever. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah, so several defaults were already in place to, for example, make it, we introduced some defaults to make it more difficult for most roles to be able to perform any lifecycle operations on a super administrator, which is the highest level role. But there are other privileged administrative roles in Okta. We can't just focus on super admin. There's a whole bunch of other roles that are highly privileged, in my opinion. And so we wanted to make sure with this feature that we could cover for those risk scenarios as well. So today we're going to look at one of those roles. For example, we'll look at an approval flow we created for access to a role called application administrator. Now, that doesn't sound highly privileged, but it really is. This enables you to create new application integrations, for example. So we're going to assume that most of our app administrators in this case are using a custom admin role that's descoped that allows them to view and maintain their app integrations, but doesn't allow them to create new ones or make some modifications to existing ones that would be, that would help elevate privilege. So I'm now going to hand over to Harish to show you this feature in action. Basically, we're going to start with, he's going to show you the admin bundle. So that is the admin bundle being the combination of permissions that an administrative role has and the resources for which those permissions apply. And then we'll move through the approval flow. So over to you, Harish.
Wonderful. Thank you. So Patrick, what you see here is I've navigated under security to administrators, and then I've navigated to the tab called governance. So the first thing you do is you create a bundle. And for demonstration purpose, I have a bundle here. Let's look at this. Bundle is just a combination of roles and resources. So here we have the application administrator role assigned to all the apps. Pretty simple. So I'm going to go ahead and close it. The next thing you do is you assign this role to access request condition. So once again here, I've created this condition here. Let's go ahead and take a look at this condition. I'm going to click on edit here. So the condition here says that only users who belong to a specific group, and for demonstration purpose, we're calling this all privileged admins, can request access for this bundle, which is the one I showed you earlier. And we're going to just give them access for an hour. And I think, once again, this is for demonstration purpose. I just made it 1 hour, but you can change it to several hours, several days, or several weeks based on what your business needs are. In addition to it, then what we do is we assign an approval sequence. And the approval sequence I have here is 2 levels of authorization for approval. Let's take a look at this approval sequence. I'm going to click on the 3 dots here, click on edit. All right, I'm prompted to authenticate. Perfect. So this approval sequence has questions. So here I'm going to ask the person requesting access, hey, why do you need access? It's going to be a text box. If I want, I can request additional questions, which could be a text box or a drop down with a bunch of values or something related to a time. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And then here's the approval part. So initially, it's going to go to a group called App Admin Approvers. They're going to approve it. If it gets denied, then it's going to exit the sequence. If it gets approved, it goes to another level of approval. In this case, for demonstration purpose, I've assigned it to me, but you can easily change it to a group or a group owner or even the manager of the person requesting access. That's pretty much it. It's the approval sequence. I'm going to go ahead and exit out from here since I'm not making any changes. And then let's go back to the approval sequence here and cancel out because we're not making any changes. So in a nutshell, we have a role which is associated with the access request condition and an approval sequence all ready to go. Now I'm going to hand it off to Brett to walk you through what happens next.
So great. Thanks. While you enable that that particular flow, basically what happens is if a user goes in and requests access, you can configure this access request app to send out approval workflows via email or via Slack, via Teams. There's pre-built integrations with all of those productivity tools, depending on what you're using in your workplace. And that way, approval can be granted in just a couple of clicks to grant the requester access to the role for that specified period of time. And after that, the requester obviously goes back to whatever baseline role they had previously. So, Harish, if you could now maybe demonstrate that from a user perspective, someone who doesn't have access to this application administrator role. And
Absolutely.
hopefully we'll be able to, between us, approve it, because it'll send an approval notification to both of us.
I've seen a couple of incidents where that app administrator role could be used in ways that were kind of surprising, right? So I'm not at all surprised that this is one you're putting in the demo, because I think it was sort of a surprise to everyone how far you could get just with that level of permission.
Yep, and this is one way to deal with it is obviously you need. Part of the value of Okta is that people are able to integrate with 300 or 400 integrations over the course of a year. Its speed to market is one of our key value props for people who are doing a lot of merger and acquisition and that kind of thing. So you don't want to slow them down, but you also want to create an environment where
the changes are actually authorized and intended. Yeah, I get it.
So let's do it, Harish. Let's show the user experience for a regular user. I'll just log into the Access Requests app at my end as well, so I can approve it.
Absolutely. So for this demonstration purpose, myself and Brett, we're going to be approvers. So we're going to have 2 levels of approval, and we both are going to be approvers. So let me go ahead and actually enable this access request here. Perfect. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over as a user, Alec. So give me a second here. I'm going to log in. Perfect. So when Alec logs in, he's going to see access request right here in his dashboard. So he's going to click on access request. All right. And then he can request the Okta admin console. And then when he clicks on it, he's going to request the application admin bundle. And then he's prompted to explain why he needs access. So for demonstration purpose, I'll say, this is risky is demo. I need access. And go ahead and click on submit. That's it. So as you can see here, Alec has put in a request for the application admin bundle, and you can see he doesn't have access to the admin console. Now, what happens under the hood is the approval sequence gets triggered, and the approvers are notified. And once again, for demonstration purpose, I'm going to request Brett to check his notifications so he can approve the request.
I'm ahead of you. Just done it. So it's up to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you for approving. And I'll be the second approver. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my dashboard here real quick. I'm going to click on access request. Perfect. So I see there is a pending request here from Alec. I see that it's been approved by Brett, and now it's my turn to approve. So I'm going to go ahead and click on approve. Everything looks good, and access has been granted. So for demonstration purpose, I'm going to switch back as Alec here. I'm going to click on work, and I'm going to go ahead and reload this browser. Perfect. And as you can see here, Alec is now granted access to the application bundle that gives him access to the admin console.
We love a bit of just-in-time admin, just-in-time privilege. We always love that. I'm a little bit disappointed though that you don't have like YubiKeys, metal YubiKeys around your neck, around your necks on chains, and you have to stick them into a like those movies with the submarines and the nuclear weapons. You should have to turn the YubiKeys at the same time. For the dual authorization, but no, I mean, for these purposes, not involving nuclear weapons, I think it's fine. That one all makes sense. I don't think we really need to explain much more on that. But I believe you had one more feature you wanted to demo. Is that right, Brett? That's
right. In a similar vein to this one, a final demo is called Protected Actions. So when it's enabled, Protected Actions is about prompting an administrative user for step-up authentication when they attempt to perform a sensitive operation in the admin console. And you can see the list of some of the pre-baked sensitive operations there on your screen. So we already currently require reauthentication under this org for any of these highly privileged operations, even though the admin's already satisfied a high assurance factor for accessing the admin console in the first place. we have to do this because our threat model needs to account for, something like a session hijacking event.
Well, that's right. You need to account for stolen tokens, right? And that, and that's why, pegging an action to a step-up auth, I mean, it is what makes sense in this year, 2024.
Absolutely. Or even a physical attack. You can imagine an administrator's logged into their admin console. They've satisfied their MFA challenge and they've walked away from their desk and left it unattended and unlocked or something like that. You wouldn't want some random person in the office to come up and make some significant change to your configuration. So one of the protected actions is that any attempt to modify or disable the protected actions feature, that is in itself a protected actions. We're getting a bit meta here, but it's good from demonstration purposes because we can very simply just try and edit a protected action and we should be presented with a step up. So go for it, Harish.
Awesome. Thank you. So what I'm going to do is, for demonstration purpose, let's say that I'm an admin. I just stepped away from my monitor for a little bit, maybe to get a drink or something, and some bad actor or someone just wants to make some changes. So if they were to click on edit, I'd make any changes. For example, they want to just uncheck a box here and click on save configuration. What you're going to see here is this is going to prompt for MFA challenge. And obviously, whoever is making these changes is not going to satisfy this change. So they're going to cancel out or close this browser and then go away. So now what happens? So obviously the changes didn't go through, but what I want to show you here is the report and the system logs. So here, if I go back to system logs and let's click on this right here, you can see that there was a protected action that was modified that prompted a challenge, and that led for Okta to put up MFA challenge, and that failed. And this is the entry in the log file that is extremely powerful. Over to you, Brett.
That's it. Pretty simple feature, but step up auth for a lot of the critical operations. We'll add to that list over time. That is another one of those features that maybe a lot of Okta customers don't know is there, and they should definitely go and select it if it isn't on by default. I should have checked that. Could be older orgs don't have it on by default, so please do go and check.
Yeah, and I'm guessing in this case too, it's about kicking out that alert to the seam, right, for follow up.
Yep.
Outside of the console. I think that's interesting that you've made the alerting choices about putting it in the Okta log, which isn't, right in the admin's face. It's very much about like, well, no, this goes into the event log, and you need to probably tell the SIEM team to be on the lookout for these sort of things as well. I'd imagine that would be something you'd be recommending.
Definitely. So yeah, protected actions is its own event. Obviously, there is some other events tied to it there, like an authentication failure, but you'd be getting a lot of them during the course of a day. So having a protected action and an auth failure in the same with the same session ID is pretty much what you're looking for.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, I mean, all of this makes a lot of sense. I realized I misspoke earlier when I said lapsus. I meant, of course, Scattered Spider was the threat actor, but they all tie back to the com, right? Like they're all this, crazy kids these days. But no, I mean, these are all, tremendously useful features. And I imagine it's one of those demos. I'm just so happy to host it because I imagine for a lot of your customers listening or watching this, I'm sorry, they wouldn't know that these features exist, right? Because they're very new. And, it's the first time that Okta's talking about them. So they can go out and actually put a lot of this stuff into action. I'd imagine that, that's going to be your comms around this is you're going to be recommending that everyone does this. But it's hard, isn't it? As a vendor, when you introduce a new feature like this, how do you make people aware? You can send them an email. They're already getting a lot of emails. You can't make them read it, right?
Well, as particularly because of the number of things we've done since October, this is getting on to the 30 or 40th new feature that we've built into their existing product that we've rolled out just in a short space of months. So literally in the last 2 days, there've been blasts out of some fairly significant changes. Things like changing our AD agent so that it's using Depop. Things like changing, adding new custom permissions so that you can create more and more granular roles. When there's something like that coming out every week, it can be hard to get the totality of the messages out. But so we're grateful for this opportunity to at least talk about 4 of them that we think are super important.
All right. Well,
Absolutely.
we're going to wrap it up there. Harish Chakraborty, Brett Winifred, thank you both for joining me to walk me through all of those features, which, yeah, when you're sitting there watching them, and I'm sure a lot of people had this reaction, they're all just really sensible. You know, it's not about the latest large language model powered AI, whatever. It's just here's some sensible features that you can use in your IDP, in your identity platform to mitigate the effect of token compromise for an administrator session, which sadly is an issue we're dealing with these days. Not just Okta tokens either. Like it is, stolen auth tokens are the new digital gold, right? So in the underground. Thank you both for joining me. Really appreciate your time.
Cheers. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.